Hello, my name is Peter, 38 years old, living in Denver, Colorado. If you met me on the street, you'd probably think I'm just an ordinary guy who likes wearing casual button-up shirts, sipping black coffee at the corner cafe, and occasionally gazing at the Rocky Mountains from my small office window. But the truth is, I run a private investment fund, a career I've built through sweat, tears, and countless sleepless nights. I'm behind tech and finance deals that the press loves to call miracles. I don't brag about it because I don't see the need. To me, success isn't something to flaunt. It's about keeping my life and the lives of those I love peaceful and secure. I'm married to Emily, a brilliant entrepreneur with the blood of an old-money aristocratic family running through her veins. Her family, the Warringtons, is a name that America's financial elite mention with a mix of reverence and caution. They have connections most people can only dream of, and throw lavish parties where every invitation is a statement of power. When I stepped into Emily's world, I knew I was entering a high-stakes game where every glance was scrutinizing, every word carefully weighed. But I love her, and for that I was willing to play. In my early entrepreneurial days, I was just a young guy with bold ideas and a big dream. Emily's family, especially her father, Henry Warrington, never let me forget that. To him, I was unworthy, a small-town nobody who got lucky marrying his daughter. A proper match was a phrase he often repeated like a mantra to remind me of my place. Emily's mother, Eleanor, was more subtle, but her polite smiles always carried a cold edge, as if I were a mismatched decoration in their opulent home. I still carry a memory from 5 years ago that left a deep scar. The first Thanksgiving after Emily and I got married. I was as excited as a kid. I spent the whole day in the kitchen carefully preparing a traditional dish from my family. Roasted sweet potato pie with honey and cinnamon, something my mother used to make every holiday. I wanted to bring a piece of myself, a bit of warmth from my childhood to share with my new family. I imagined everyone would laugh, ask about the dish, and welcome me as one of their own. I was wrong. The dinner took place at the Warringtons' lavish mansion on the outskirts of Denver. The chandelier sparkled, the table was draped in white silk, and expensive red wine filled the air with an extravagance I'd never gotten used to. I stood there in my new suit trying to smile despite the creeping sense of alienation. When my sweet potato pie was brought out, Emily's mother looked at it with a forced smile. "Oh, Peter, you made this. It looks rustic, doesn't it?" she said, her voice light but sharp as a thin blade. A few chuckles echoed from other relatives. I tried to stay calm, thinking it was just a thoughtless joke. Then came Henry's turn. He sat at the head of the table, his silver hair gleaming, his eyes icy. In front of everyone, he raised his wine glass, looked straight at me, and said, "Peter, you're truly lucky to have married Emily. Certainly the luckiest break of your life." The room fell silent. I felt the blood rush to my face, not out of anger, but humiliation. No one spoke up for me. Emily bowed her head, clutching her napkin tightly, but said nothing. As for me, I stood up, offered a mechanical apology, and left the table. That night, I drove home alone. The cold wind blew through the window and I felt my heart constrict. It was the first time I realized that in my in-laws' world, kindness wasn't valued, it was seen as weakness. Only wealth, status, and power held worth. I never attended another Thanksgiving with the Warringtons. Emily understood and didn't push me. But I know deep down she still hopes that one day I'll find common ground with her family. As time passed, I kept working, quietly building my own empire. My investment fund grew, and I became the force behind several high-profile tech startups. I got to know people like James Bentley, a renowned finance mogul who respected me not just for my numbers, but for how I treated others. To him, I wasn't just a partner, but a friend. To the Warringtons, though, I remained Emily's husband. They knew nothing about my work, and I didn't bother explaining. If they didn't want to understand, I didn't feel the need to prove myself. Then this Christmas arrived and things started to shift. I got a call from Bentley on a cold morning. His voice was warm as usual, but today it carried a hint of excitement. "Peter, are you free tonight? I want you to come with me to a party. There are some people I'd like you to meet." He added that it was a major event with big names in business. He sent me a +1 invitation, emphasizing how much he wanted me there. I agreed without much thought. Bentley was someone I respected, and if he invited me, I didn't want to say no. But when I looked closely at the invitation, my heart skipped a beat. The venue was the Warringtons' mansion. What the hell? A grand Christmas party hosted at my father-in-law's estate, an event the entire Denver elite knew about. But I, the Warringtons' son-in-law, had no clue. I checked the guest list Bentley sent. As expected, my name wasn't on it. I called Emily, hoping for an explanation. "I didn't know anything, Peter," she said, her voice trembling. "Dad told me it was just a small gathering for close friends this year." I gave a bitter laugh, the humiliation from 5 years ago resurfacing. They hadn't just excluded me, they didn't even bother to tell me. To them, I was still a nobody, unworthy of standing among their esteemed guests. I was ready to decline Bentley's invitation, but he called again, his voice full of sincerity. "Peter, I need you there. There's a major investment opportunity, and I only trust you to discuss it." I sighed and nodded over the phone. "All right, I'll go." But deep down, I knew I was walking into a storm. The grand Christmas party was set to begin at 6 p.m. By 5 p.m., a sleek black Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up in front of my house. Mr. Bentley stepped out dressed in a navy suit, his salt and pepper hair neatly combed, flashing a warm smile. "You look good, Peter," he said, giving me a light pat on the shoulder as I climbed into the car. "Thanks for agreeing to come with me. Tonight's going to be interesting." I gave a faint smile, saying nothing, but in my mind the word interesting sounded like an ominous prophecy. The Warringtons' mansion came into view, bathed in brilliant golden light, like a small palace amidst the snow-covered Denver suburbs. Marble columns, towering glass windows, and rows of pine trees adorned with twinkling lights created a scene of breathtaking opulence. The driveway was packed with cars, Rolls-Royces, Mercedes-Benzes, each a symbol of power and wealth. I took a deep breath, the icy air filling my lungs as if to remind me that no matter how hard I tried, I didn't belong here. Bentley handed me a +1 invitation, a gold-embossed card with "Guest of James Bentley" printed in sharp, elegant text. "Keep it on you," he said with a wink. "You'll need it to get in." I nodded, slipping the card into my pocket, but it felt like I was holding a ticking time bomb. As we passed through the grand gates, a staff member in a black suit checked our invitations, his eyes lingering on me with mild curiosity before nodding us through. Inside, the vast main hall was awash in light and music. A live orchestra played Carol of the Bells, its melodic strains blending with the lively chatter of the guests. Men in impeccably tailored suits and women in shimmering evening gowns painted a vivid picture of Denver's elite. I recognized a few familiar faces from past business dealings, a tech company CEO, a prominent lawyer, and a couple of investors who had worked with my fund. But none of them knew I was the Warrington son-in-law. To them, I was just Peter, the reserved man with sharp investment decisions. And I liked it that way. Anonymity gave me freedom, but tonight I knew that freedom was about to be tested. Bentley led me through the crowd, introducing me to a few of his associates. "This is Peter, the man who helped me turn a small startup into a tech unicorn 2 years ago," he said to a group of businessmen, his voice brimming with pride. I shook hands, smiled, and exchanged pleasantries, but my mind was constantly scanning the room. I was looking for familiar faces from the Warrington family, and it didn't take long to find them. Emily's mother, Eleanor, stood near the bar, resplendent in a crimson silk gown, chatting with a group of women. Her eyes flicked toward me, paused for a second, then quickly looked away as if I were a ghost. I spotted Emily's cousin Clara laughing with a middle-aged man. She saw me too, but instead of a greeting, she turned away, whispering something to her companion. A chill ran down my spine. They weren't just excluding me, they were pretending I didn't exist. "Peter, you all right?" Bentley asked, noticing the shift in my expression. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Just a bit overwhelmed." It's been a while since I've been to a party like this. He chuckled, patting my shoulder. Relax. We're here to talk business, not to blend into the crowd. We found a quiet corner near the fireplace where the flames danced across the wood-paneled walls. Bentley began discussing a new investment opportunity, a biotech startup developing a drug with the potential to revolutionize healthcare. He wanted me to consider funding it through my firm, and I listened, nodded, and took mental notes. But my mind wasn't fully there. I could feel the distant stares, the whispers, and the tension in the air when someone recognized me but didn't dare approach. Then came the moment I dreaded most. Henry Warrington stepped onto the dais in the center of the main hall. The spotlight illuminated him, highlighting his silver hair and elegant black suit. He tapped the microphone and the room fell silent, all eyes turning toward him. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice deep and commanding, "I welcome you all to the Warrington family's Christmas party. This is a special occasion, not only to celebrate the holiday season, but to honor the relationships and successes that have brought us here." He went on, recounting the Warrington family's history, his company's achievements, and the major projects in the works. The crowd clapped and nodded, and I saw the smug smile on his lips, the smile of a man who knew he held the room in his grip. I lowered my head, trying to avoid his gaze, hoping I could slip away quietly after Bentley finished his pitch. But then Henry saw me. Well, look who's here," his voice boomed, laced with the familiar mockery I knew all too well. "Peter, you made it? Everyone, this is Peter, my daughter Emily's husband. He certainly knows how to worm his way into events like this." The room erupted in laughter, a sharp cutting sound that sliced through the air. I stood there, my grip tightening on my wine glass until I feared it might shatter. My face burned, not with anger but with the familiar sting of humiliation from 5 years ago. I wanted to respond, to say something in my defense, but my throat tightened. I lowered my head, taking a deep breath, telling myself I didn't need to prove anything to them, not here, not tonight. But Henry wasn't done. He stepped down from the dais, his smug smile still in place, his black suit gleaming under the chandelier's light. The crowd parted to let him pass, as if he were the king of this party. Then his eyes met Bentley's and his smile shifted, no longer mocking but deferential, almost fawning. I recognized it immediately. Bentley wasn't just any guest, he was James Bentley, the financial titan the Warringtons were desperately courting to bolster their company's position. "Mr. Bentley," Henry exclaimed, his voice dripping with contrived warmth. He approached us, standing near the fireplace where Bentley and I were. "It's an honor to have you here tonight. We've been looking forward to this opportunity for a long time. I hope you're enjoying the party." Bentley nodded, his smile polite but cool. "The party is impressive, Henry. The Warringtons certainly know how to host." His tone was even, betraying no emotion, but I knew he was sharp enough to see through Henry's facade. Henry laughed heartily, giving Bentley a friendly pat on the shoulder as if they were old friends. "We've prepared everything to welcome you. Our company is eager to discuss the new project with you. I believe this partnership could be a game changer." He paused, glancing at me, and his smile twisted into a sneer of contempt. "But I must say I'm a bit surprised to see Peter here. He seems very diligent in cozying up to people like you, Bentley. Trying to make a name for yourself, Peter?" His words hit like a punch to the chest. The crowd around us began to murmur, a few chuckles rising, and I felt dozens of eyes on me. I opened my mouth, wanting to say something, but my mind went blank. I didn't know how to respond. If I fought back, I'd only look desperate. If I stayed silent, I'd be the weakling they always saw me as. I stood there, frozen, the world shrinking to those prying eyes and mocking smiles. Then Bentley spoke. "Henry," his voice was low and sharp, cutting through the stifling air. He stepped forward, positioning himself between me and Henry, his eyes cold as ice. "I think you're gravely mistaken." Henry's brow furrowed, his fawning smile faltering. "Mistaken? What do you mean, James?" Bentley glanced at me, his expression softening briefly as if to ensure I was okay. Then he turned back, locking eyes with Henry, his voice ringing clear, silencing the room. I'm surprised to learn Peter is your son-in-law, Henry. It's odd because you've never mentioned him. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I saw Eleanor, Emily's mother, near the bar, her hand tightening around her wine glass, her eyes panicked. Henry opened his mouth to speak, but Bentley didn't give him the chance. Peter isn't cozying up to me, Bentley continued, his tone steely. He's one of the sharpest minds in finance I've ever met. His fund has turned small startups into companies worth hundreds of millions. He's behind deals that even your company, Henry, is scrambling to get a piece of. I'm here tonight, not for the Warringtons, but for Peter. The room seemed to hold its breath. Blood rushed to my ears, not from shame, but from a strange mix of relief and pain. I looked at Henry, and for the first time I saw panic in his eyes. His smug smile was gone, replaced by a stiff expression as if he'd been slapped in front of hundreds. Bentley wasn't finished. He turned to the crowd, his voice carrying like a proclamation. I must say I'm disappointed, Henry. Disappointed in how you treat your own son-in-law. I was prepared to discuss a major deal with your company, but after tonight, I think I need to reconsider. Henry tried to regain his composure. James, I think there's been a misunderstanding, he stammered, his usual confidence gone. Peter is my son-in-law, and of course we value him greatly. Bentley cut him off. Value? He repeated, his voice dripping with sarcasm. If this is how you show value, I'm afraid your company isn't the right partner for me. I only work with people who respect others, Henry. And Peter, more than anyone here, deserves respect. He turned to me, placing a hand on my shoulder. Peter, I'm sorry for dragging you into this. You don't deserve it. His eyes met mine, and I saw a sincerity I rarely encountered in this world. Do you want to stay or leave? The choice is yours. I looked at him, then at Henry, who now looked like a statue stripped of its powerful veneer. I looked at the crowd, their once mocking faces now silent, waiting for my response. And I looked toward the door where the soft glow of lights mingled with the darkness of the winter night. I think I should go, I said, my voice low but firm. Thank you, Bentley, for everything. Bentley nodded, and we walked out of the main hall, leaving Henry standing alone under the glittering chandelier. Snow fell gently outside, dusting the marble steps. The cold seeped through my suit, but in my heart a small flame burned. Not of vindication, but of liberation. For the first time in years, I felt I no longer needed to prove anything. The snow fell heavier as Mr. James Bentley and I stepped out of the Warringtons' mansion. The dazzling glow from the ornate windows behind us faded, obscured by a curtain of white snow. Bentley's car arrived to pick us up a few minutes later, and the driver hurriedly opened the door. I slid into the back seat, feeling as though I'd just walked off a battlefield. Bentley settled beside me, signaling the driver to go. The car was quiet, filled only with the soft hum of the engine and the sound of tires rolling over the snow-covered road. I stared out the window, watching snowflakes glimmer under the streetlights, trying to sort through the chaos of emotions swirling in my mind. The relief of having the truth laid bare mixed with an emptiness. I had waited for this moment, but it didn't bring the joy I'd once imagined. Bentley sat silently beside me, as if giving me space to breathe. Peter, he finally spoke, his voice low and warm. I'm truly sorry about tonight. I didn't expect things to go that far. I turned to look at him, forcing a smile. It's not your fault, Bentley. I know you were just trying to help. I paused, taking a deep breath. And I'm grateful for what you said back there. Bentley frowned, his eyes sharp but empathetic. You don't need to thank me. Everything I said was true. You're a brilliant man, Peter, and I'm not just talking about numbers or deals. You have integrity, something not everyone in that room can claim. He leaned toward me, his tone growing more serious. But I have to ask you something. Why do you let them treat you like that? Why haven't you told them, your wife's family, about everything you've accomplished? His question stopped me cold. I looked down at my hands, fingers clasped tightly as if holding on to something I couldn't let slip away. I don't know, I admitted, my voice quieter than I intended. Maybe because I didn't want to prove anything to them. I just wanted to live my life, do my work, and keep Emily happy, but I paused, a lump forming in my throat. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I've let them go too far. Bentley nodded as if he understood more than I'd said. You're not wrong for wanting to live humbly, Peter. But you can't let others trample on your worth forever. Not for your sake, but for the people you love. Emily, she needs to see you stand up, not just for her, but for yourself. I fell silent, letting his words sink into every corner of my mind. Bentley wasn't just a business partner, he was a friend, a mentor, and in this moment he felt like the father I never had. What do you think I should do now? I asked, unsure if I wanted to hear the answer. Bentley gave a small smile, his eyes glinting in the dim light of the car. You don't need me to tell you what to do, Peter. You already know the answer. But if I were to advise you, I'd say, show them who you are, not for revenge, but to remind them you deserve respect. I nodded, a warmth spreading through my chest. Thank you, Bentley. Really. He chuckled, patting my knee lightly. Don't thank me, just remember I'm here for you whenever you need me. He signaled the driver to stop in front of my house. Get some rest, Peter. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. I stepped out of the car, watching the Bentley disappear into the snow. Standing in front of my house, I felt as though I'd just weathered a storm, but for the first time I didn't feel like the loser. I opened the door, stepping into the familiar warmth of my home, but I knew something had changed, not just for me, but for the Warringtons too. In the days following the Christmas party, Denver became the epicenter of whispers among the financial elite. News of the event at the Warringtons' mansion spread like wildfire across dry grass. No one talked about the dazzling lights or the expensive wine. They talked about the moment James Bentley stood up for me, about how Henry Warrington was humiliated in front of hundreds of distinguished guests, and about my true identity, the man behind the major deals that had once set the business world abuzz. The press started digging. An article in the Denver Business Journal ran with the headline, "The mystery man behind tech unicorns, Peter, the forgotten son-in-law of the Warringtons." They wrote about my investment fund, the startups I'd helped grow, and how I chose to live discreetly despite having every reason to boast. I didn't read the whole article. I didn't need to. What they wrote mattered less than what was happening to the Warringtons company. The fallout came faster than I expected. Bentley didn't stop at his declaration at the party. A few days later, he publicly withdrew from a major project with the Warringtons company, one Henry had banked on to solidify their family's standing. Bentley's move was like a stone that brought down an entire wall. Other partners began to hesitate. A major bank refused to grant the loan the Warringtons were negotiating. Several key clients canceled contracts, citing a lack of confidence in leadership. The whispers about Henry's disrespect didn't stay confined to the elite. They reached the company's employees, causing cracks to form within. Emily called me one morning, her voice trembling over the phone. "Peter, have you heard what's happening with Dad's company?" I was sitting in my small office, gazing out at the snow-covered Rockies. "I've heard," I replied, keeping my tone steady. "Dad, he's panicking," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "They lost the deal with Bentley and now other partners are pulling out. The bank denied the loan and... Peter, I don't know what to do. Dad's blaming you." I gripped the phone tightly, feeling as though a stone was pressing down on my chest. "Blaming me?" I repeated, my voice colder than I intended. "For not standing there and letting him humiliate me again?" Emily was silent for a long moment. I could hear her breathing as if she were holding back tears. "Peter, I'm sorry. I know Dad was wrong. I know I was wrong for not speaking up, but the company is my family's lifeblood. If it collapses, I don't know what will happen to everyone." I didn't respond right away. I thought about the years I'd stayed silent, the times I'd swallowed my pride to keep the peace, the way her family saw me as unworthy. But I also thought about Emily, her smile on our wedding day, the way she hugged me after a long day. I loved her, And despite her silence for so long, I knew she was caught in the crossfire between me and her family. "What do you want me to do, Emily?" I asked, my voice softer. "I don't know," she admitted. I don't want to lose everything. I don't want to lose my family, and I don't want to lose you." I hung up, feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. I knew the Warringtons' company was teetering on the edge, and I knew I could do something to change that. The question was, should I? In the weeks that followed, news of the Warrington Company's crisis flooded the headlines. Their stock plummeted, major projects stalled, and employees began resigning in droves. Henry Warrington, once a titan standing at the pinnacle of power, now appeared in the media with a haggard face, desperately trying to reassure investors that everything was under control. But everyone knew he was clinging to a sinking ship. One late January afternoon, with snow still blanketing Denver, my doorbell rang. I was in my study reviewing a financial report when I heard Emily's voice from the living room. "Peter, someone's here to see you." Her voice trembled as if she knew what was coming. I stood, straightened my shirt, and walked out. Standing at the door was Henry Warrington. I barely recognized him. The man who once stood on a dais with a smug smile now looked worn, his silver hair disheveled, his eyes sunken, and his gray suit wrinkled as if he'd been wearing it for days. He stood there, hands in his coat pockets, his gaze averted, as if the mere act of standing at my doorstep was an unbearable act of humility. "Peter," he said, his voice hoarse, almost a whisper, "can I speak with you for a moment?" I glanced at Emily, standing a few steps away, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She gave a slight nod as if to say she'd let us handle this. I took a deep breath and opened the door wider. "Come in." We sat across from each other in the living room, the firelight from the fireplace dancing on the wooden walls. But the air between us was colder than the wind outside. Henry sat on the sofa, his back slightly hunched, his hands clasped tightly as if trying to hold himself together. I waited, saying nothing, letting him speak first. "Peter," he began, his voice shaky, "you've probably heard about the state of the company." He paused, glancing at me as if hoping I'd say something to break the silence. But I didn't. I just looked at him, my expression calm but unyielding. He cleared his throat and continued. "We're in trouble. Major partners have pulled out, the bank denied our loan, and the stock is tanking. If nothing changes, the company won't last more than a few months." He lowered his head, and for the first time in my life I saw Henry Warrington, the man who prided himself on his reputation and power, bow his head to someone else, and that someone was me. I said nothing, just listened, feeling a weight settle in my chest. Part of me wanted to stand up, to tell him he deserved this for everything he'd done, for the years he belittled me, humiliated me in front of others. But another part, a deeper part, thought of Emily, of the tears she'd hidden from me, of her plea to save her family. "What do you want me to do?" I asked, my voice low but cold. Henry looked up, his eyes wavering as if unsure he had the courage to say what came next. I need your help. You have connections, credibility in the investment world. If you speak up, if you step in, maybe the partners will come back, maybe we'll have a chance." I frowned, suppressing the anger rising within me. "You think I can just show up and say a few words and everything will be fixed? You think I have that kind of power after everything you've said about me?" Henry paled but didn't argue. He lowered his head again, his voice softer. "I know I was wrong, Peter. What I said at the party, and before that, I was wrong. I didn't know who you were, what you've done. I'm sorry." His apology hung in the room, but it didn't bring the relief I'd expected. It only made me feel emptier. I stood and walked to the fireplace, staring into the flames. "An apology isn't enough, Henry. Not after everything that's happened. Do you think I can just forget the years you treated me like I was unworthy? The times you made me feel like I didn't belong in this family?" He didn't respond. I turned back, looking him in the eye. "But I'm not someone who holds grudges forever. I can help your company, but I have conditions." Henry looked up, a flicker of hope in his eyes, tempered by wariness. What conditions? I want a stake in the company, I said, my voice firm. 10%. If I step in, if I use my reputation to bring back partners and investors, I need a say in the company. Investors won't trust me if I'm just an outsider. They need to know I have real power, that I'm part of Warrington. Silence enveloped the room. I saw Henry's hands clench, his face contorting as if he'd been stabbed. The Warrington Company was the legacy of generations, and sharing a stake, especially with someone he'd once despised, was an unbearable act of submission. But he had no choice. I knew it, and so did he. 10%, he repeated, his voice barely a whisper. You know that's a big number, Peter. I know, I replied, but that's the price of the trust you want me to bring. If you don't agree, I can't help. And you know what will happen to your company without this help. Henry looked at me, his eyes flickering between anger, pain, and helplessness. Finally, he nodded slowly, each movement like a dagger to his pride. All right, he said, 10%. But you have to promise to do everything to save the company. I'm not promising for you, I said, my voice cold. I'm doing this for Emily. Henry said nothing more. He stood, adjusted his coat, and left my house without looking back. As the door closed, I heard Emily sobbing from the bedroom. I wanted to run to her, to hold her and tell her everything would be okay, but I knew now wasn't the time. I had work to do. A few days later, I appeared at a press conference organized by the Warrington Company. The room was packed with reporters, camera flashes going off incessantly, and murmurs filled the air as I stepped onto the podium. Henry stood beside me, his face stiff, but he said nothing. This was my stage. I'm Peter, I began, my voice low but clear, and as of today I am officially a shareholder of the Warrington Company with a 10% stake. I'm here not only to help the company navigate its current challenges, but to ensure that Warrington remains a trusted partner for investors and clients. The room fell silent, then erupted with questions from the reporters. Why did you decide to join the Warrington Company? What are your plans to restore confidence among partners? I answered concisely but firmly, sending a clear message. Peter was no longer a nobody. I was part of Warrington, and I had the power to change things. My speech made headlines across major publications. Forbes called me the mysterious man changing the game for the Warringtons. The Wall Street Journal wrote about how I, a discreet investor, was becoming a focal point in the financial world. But I didn't care about the praise. I cared about keeping my promise. I began reaching out to former partners who had worked with my investment fund. I called CEOs, investors, and even those who had abandoned Warrington after the scandal at the party. I explained the restructuring plans, the new opportunities the company could offer if they returned. Some were hesitant, but my reputation and the fact that I was now a shareholder made them start to reconsider. Finally, I called Bentley. Peter, he answered immediately, his voice warm. I've been waiting for this call. You knew I'd call? I asked, unable to hide a smile. I knew you're a man of your word, he replied. And I also knew you wouldn't let your wife's family's company collapse no matter how they treated you. I told him about the deal with Henry, the 10% stake, and my plan to save the company. I need you, Bentley, I said bluntly. If you come back, others will follow. You're the key. Bentley was silent for a moment, then chuckled softly. You know, Peter, I'm not coming back for Warrington. I'm coming back for you. You're the one I trust, not just for your intellect, but for your compassion. And by the way, congratulations on securing 10% of Warrington without spending a dime. I responded softly. Thank you, Bentley. Your encouragement has made me feel more confident and stronger than ever. Spring arrived in Denver, bringing warm winds that melted the snow on the Rockies. The Warrington Company slowly regained its momentum, though it no longer carried the same aura of invincibility it once had. Partners began to return, loans were approved, and the press gradually shifted from criticism to praising the resurgence of the Warrington family. but I knew that behind it all were the long nights I spent in my office making calls, negotiating, and persuading people to place their trust in the company again. One evening, Emily and I sat in the living room, the firelight now softer, no longer carrying the biting chill of winter. She held my hand, her eyes shimmering with a gratitude she rarely expressed in words. "Peter," she said, her voice gentle, "thank you for everything. I know Dad and my family didn't deserve it, but you saved them." I smiled, but a question lingered in my mind. I squeezed her hand lightly, then stood and walked to the window, looking out at the street bathed in golden light. "You know, Emily," I said, my voice low but steady, "I could have saved the company without taking the 10% stake. I had the connections, the credibility to convince partners without needing a seat on the board. I could have done it with just a few calls, a few promises." Emily looked at me, her eyes wavering between surprise and confusion. "Then why did you demand the stake? Why did you make it so hard for Dad?" I turned back, meeting her gaze. "Because it's what they owed me. Not for money, not for power, but for the years they treated me like a nobody, like I wasn't worthy of standing beside you. The insults, the scornful looks, the times they made me feel like I didn't belong here. That 10% wasn't the price I set to save the company. It was the reward I earned for enduring them, for not giving up on you." She fell silent, tears streaming down her cheeks. For the first time, I saw in her eyes not just gratitude but understanding. She stood, wrapped her arms around me, and whispered, "You deserve so much more, Peter. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you sooner." I held her, feeling the warmth of her body, and for the first time in years I felt a true sense of peace. My new standing with my wife's family had officially begun.